Hi, I'm Reverend Nicole Reilley, and welcome to the Clergy Wellness Podcast. This is Season 1, Episode 8, Time Management Hacks for Clergy. Today we'll also look at a wellness practice of the week, what is making this week good, and a mindfulness meditation. Let's jump in. It's no secret that pastors have a lot on their plates. At the church, you can have a sermon to write, prayers to put together, a staff meeting, time for worship planning, church meetings, hospital visits, home visits, phone calls, social media posts, pastoral care, hiring and firing, dealing with finance, developing leaders, and a weekly or monthly e-news column. And, of course, depending on if you have staff or leadership, you may also be the one who puts the children's ministry lesson together and then connects with volunteers. You may also be someone who's running the youth group if you don't have staff, or teaching all the small groups at the church. It can be a lot. Today, I want to look at time management hacks for us clergy, and my goal is to help you feel good about your week, to enable you to get the important things done, and really to get rid of whatever anxiety or even guilt you have when you look at everything on your to-do list and know all the expectations that will go with this week. Here's the thing. I know what it is like to look at the week and feel only dread. To do all the things instead of the 2 or 3 most important things, and to feel the anxiety of it all. 30 years of ministry has taught me a lot about time management. I have taken my share of classes on topics and tried so many different kinds of planners and organizers that I've really lost count. In fact, the planner I've been using for the last 3 years is one I created myself, since nothing out there was really helpful to me as a pastor. So, as we start, I want to start with a mantra that you will find helpful before we get into our 4 hacks for today. The mantra is this: super pastor is dead. Say it with me. Super pastor is dead. That phrase became important to me as I was working to get my calendar under control. Not only was there church, but there were other responsibilities. I had a young child, and I was dealing with a lot of different plates up in the air at the same time. As we look at calendaring and planning, one of the things that helps is to make peace with the reality that there is always something to do in the local church, and that you are not a super pastor. I will never forget one of our annual church meetings where the district superintendent, and my denomination, that's my boss, told the church that if I got everything done, I was able to go home an hour early. My reaction was, oh hell. Like, seriously, dude? If I got everything done? Because here's the reality. You will never get everything done. There is always someone to visit, someone to train, someone in crisis. So, I had to deal with the reality that this stuff was going to kill me, or super pastor had to die. So super pastor is dead, and she is buried in the South 40 at one of our old houses. So as we work on things today, I want you to keep in mind that you will never get it all done, and that you shouldn't even want to. Super pastor is dead. It's a good and helpful mantra as we do our planning today. So let me share some of my hacks with you. These are the things that I have found that have helped me to live a life of wellness as a busy clergy person. I have 4 hacks for you. Some of them may not be new to you, but I hope that they are all helpful to you today. First one is this. Each week, start by calendaring your own downtime and rest. So do this for me. Look at last week's calendar, or if you're driving, just think about it. What was on your week last week? You may have a planner that's electronic or paper. I actually use a combination of both. But look to see how much time did you actually schedule for rest, for downtime in your last week. Just notice, don't judge. Now, most people would not think of calendaring rest, but my first hack is that your life will benefit if that is where you start. Here's how you do it. This week, look at your week, your appointments, your meetings, whatever else is already listed for this coming week, and now put in a block daily for downtime. Do it daily because chances are you'll end up skipping a couple of them. Things will come up, you won't be able to get to them. Life just kind of expands like that. So how can you get this time in? How can you get in some downtime or some rest, or maybe you're going to call it me time during the week? I think a lot of it depends on you and also the church you serve. I have found it works in a variety of ways for me, depending on what's going on in the rest of my life. Some of my blocks were 30 minutes. That was often tagged on during lunch. But my goal, as I started putting this in my schedule, was to block out an hour, or even 2, if I knew I had night meetings or that things were going to get crazy. Here's the benefit of doing this. You are investing in you. And by doing this, you will be different in your ministry. I found I was more able to listen, to be patient, and to focus. It may sound counterintuitive, but a 30-minute walk or 30 minutes with my feet up or an hour nap made me a better person and a better pastor. Now, of course, doing this is a challenge, especially if you've never done it before. My calendar has always been hit and miss with this because I always have found that there were other things I could do. But I think in the last 5 years or so, I was able to do this better. It's true, we're all going to have demands, but the reality is none of us is so busy that we cannot schedule some downtime and rest time during each day. If you feel that that would just be too crazy for you, one of the things I encourage you to do is an exercise I do with pastors that I coach. A lot of times when people come for coaching, it's because things are pretty crazy. And one of the first things I have people do is say, for the first 2 weeks of coaching, I say, why don't you track everything that you're doing? So start off the day and just write down, maybe you're at the office at 9, you start work at 8, whatever it is, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all through the day, and then write what you do during each of those hours. I find it's actually super helpful to become conscious of how we spend our time. And most everybody I've worked with around this has been surprised at how much time they're doing on things that just really aren't that important or helpful or even enjoyable. Okay, so start by calendaring downtime and rest time. That's my first hack. And you might do it this next week by just scheduling it once or twice. I want to give you the goal of scheduling it every day, though, because, Hack number 2 is to make a list of no more than 5 things that are your top tier activities for this week. So your top tier activities are your personal and professional things that you must do this week. Here is my usual list. Number 1, sermon writing and delivery. Number 2, staff meeting. Number 3, worship planning. Number 4, exercise. Number 5, sleeping well. These are, for me, the most important things, and they will get my focus and priority. I do review the list weekly, so these things do change, but tends to be my normal list. If I'm not preaching, of course, preaching goes off the list, and some weeks, eating well rates higher than getting exercise. But you get the sense of it. Okay, so you have your planned downtime and rest for the week on the calendar. Now, make your list of the top 5 things that you need to do this week. This list for you will be your North Star. It will tell you how to spend your time. And these are the big rocks of your week, and they will be where you focus with your planning. I learned this hack actually from working with leaders in the church. Each quarter, I'd sit down with committee chairs to check in, and the first quarter of the year, we'd set 2 goals for the committee. This was the chair's North Star. So each quarter, we check in on how the goals were being reached. And the thing I saw was that having this North Star helped them feel a sense of accomplishment, which had a positive effect on their leadership and the church. In other words, they, just like us, have 100 things they could be doing. But having top-tier activities, having a North Star, allows focus, and maybe more importantly, gives us a sense of satisfaction when we do the most important things. And that is actually huge for our wellness. One of ministry's big challenges is we oftentimes feel like we never accomplish anything. So having a short list where we can say these are the most important things and we check them off each week helps us see that the most important things are being done. And that gives us a positive feeling, which generates more wellness and actually more engagement in our own ministry. Third calendar hack. Calendar not only appointments, but also blocks of time to do your top tier activities. After I block out on my calendar my times of rest and downtime, I put in blocks of 1 to 3 hours for my top tier activities. Now, of course, sleep gets more than that, but you get the point. So Monday, which has been my sermon writing day, I block 6 hours to write the sermon. On Tuesday, I would block 30 minutes to prep for the staff meeting, 1 hour for the staff meeting, 30 minutes to prep for the worship meeting, 1 hour for the worship meeting, and 30 minutes after the worship meeting to implement the things we discussed. 3 days a week, I would calendar some time for exercise. And every week I'd look at my Fitbit that tracks how I'm sleeping and look at how I might make an adjustment or two. Now, the things I just mentioned, all of these things add up to about 13 hours a week, with the bulk of these things happening on Mondays and Tuesdays. So now, the most important things are calendared, and unless somebody dies, literally, they stay in these blocks. Okay, so far, we start calendaring each week by putting in our downtime, our rest time. Second, we have a list of our top 5 top-tier activities for the week. And number 3, we calendar not only the appointments we have, but we also put in blocks of time to do our top-tier activities. Now you may ask, what about everything else? Here is what has enabled me to get a ton of things done. And this is my 4th and final hack for today. And it is this: assign a time to every task that you must accomplish. Now, here's what I mean by that. I usually have about 20 things sometimes more, on my to-do list that need to be done. Things like phone calls, social media, visits to people, coffees where I'm meeting people, newsletter articles, committee work, slides for worship, leadership development. Each week, I make a list and I write down when I will do each task and how much time I will give it to get done. So I put this directly on my calendar. So how it looks for me with how my schedule was is Monday I would write my sermon, Tuesday I would have my staff and worship stuff, and Wednesday and Thursday were for all the other tasks. So let's say we're planning out Wednesday, and I already have on my calendar a 2 o'clock meeting. So I calendar 10 a.m. phone calls and thank you notes, 11 a.m. social media, 12 o'clock lunch and downtime, 1 o'clock newsletter, 2 o'clock meeting, and 3 o'clock buffer time, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Now the hack that is here is to assign a time to each task. That will keep you focused on getting the task done in the allotted time, instead of letting yourself get distracted by Facebook or hanging out or going over to Starbucks or to get coffee or cleaning up your desktop or straightening the office. How do I know how long these things will take? Well, when I started out, I didn't really know. I just guessed. But as these things are mostly repeating tasks, like creating slides for Sunday worship or writing thank you notes for the week, those things I have a sense of how long they'll take. So I just plug them in and with a sense of how much time I need to give them. I also schedule an hour each day, usually at the end of the day, which is my buffer time. And this is the time for any of the tasks that didn't get done earlier. Maybe I got interrupted, maybe something happened that was more important, and so I had to adjust. So this last hour of the day, which for you may be at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, however that works for you, depending on how your week flows, is that kind of catch-up time. So you make sure the things from the day get finished on that day. So your first hack is to calendar your downtime and your rest time. Second is to make a list of no more than 5 things that are your top tier activities for the week. The third one is to calendar not only your appointments, but also to make blocks of time on your calendar to do your top tier activities. And the last hack is to assign a time to do every task you must accomplish on your calendar. Now, if you know me, you probably know I get more done than most people, even though I have pretty much always taken off 2 full days each week. I always take off Friday, and then most of the time I'm able to take off Saturday as well, other than I spend an hour going over my sermon notes. And if there's a wedding or a funeral, then of course I'm at the church. So I'm getting a lot done. And I'm getting a lot done because I'm calendaring it, giving it a specific time to do, and then sticking with that. Of course, emergencies happen and things come up, but a lot less than you think. These are my 5 hacks that enabled me not only to get a lot done, but to grow in my wellness in the midst of it. If I can help you by coaching you through your own schedule, you'll find out more information in the show notes. Wellness practice of the week. This is where I share something you can do to increase your wellness. This week's practice is a 20-minute walk. I know it doesn't seem like a lot to walk for 20 minutes, but 20 minutes is actually really good. There are lots of benefits of even a short walk like this. Here's some of them. It improves your mood. Studies have found that a moderately paced walk can improve your mood because it releases endorphins that trigger positive feelings in your body. Next, It increases your energy. It's pretty normal to have that afternoon slump. But researchers have found that if you walk for just 20 minutes a day, you will feel more energetic and less fatigued. Next, lowered risk of heart disease. Walking 20 minutes a day can reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke by 8%. If you walk for 40 minutes, that can reduce cardiovascular disease by 18 to 20%. Next, live longer. Even just a brief walk can reduce your risk of premature death by a staggering 1/3. Since a large number of early deaths are due to inactivity, any increased activity can have a profound effect on your lifespan. And the last one I'll share with you is a stronger memory. People who walk have a larger hippocampus, the area of the brain responsible for memory and learning. Studies show that daily walks can improve your spatial memory as well as lower your risks for dementia. So, get outside or walk in a treadmill, or one of the places I would go walking is in the fellowship hall when it was really hot outside. Even 20 minutes will increase your wellness. What is making this week good? This is the part of the episode when I talk about what I am enjoying, with the hope that you will notice some of those good things in your week too. Last week in the podcast, my topic was on doing new things and maybe even failing. And so I thought about that this week as I began my week into what I was going to do. And as I'm building my own small business, I've been reaching out and sharing what I am doing with others. And that's a little hard for me. I mean, I think it's always hard to just say, hey, I'm doing this. I appreciate your support. One of the ways I reached out this last week was I connected to the Life Coach School. Now, I am a ministry and life coach, and one of my credentials is from the Life Coach School. I consider them to be the gold standard in life coaching. And it was a dream of mine to save enough money to take their training. I graduated last October, and I continue to learn from them. They have lots of great tools, and I found a lot of help for myself there, and that's why I love working with these tools and coaching. One of the 10 things that I did this week to kind of put myself out there a little more was I applied to be one of the Life Coach School's coaches on their website. Now, this is open to everybody who's been trained by them. But as I had looked at the form earlier, the form you have to fill out and all of the stuff, it really intimidated me. And I didn't have all the information I needed. I also just don't have a headshot. I kept putting off doing any of this stuff. But this week I decided, okay, I'm going to try this new thing, and maybe it's not going to work out, but I'm going to give it a whirl. And so I did. It wasn't perfect, and I'm still waiting to hear back from them. But I stepped out and I took a risk. What is making my week good is taking risks. And I know that might be a bit weird, but even in the discomfort, it's really making this week good. Risk is making this week good. Mindfulness meditation. One of the biggest changes in my life happened when I began to really understand the importance of rest as a ministry tool. I learned about this from Reverend Mike Breen and his work on teaching biblical foundations using simple shapes, like a triangle or a circle. The shapes are used as a memory tool so you can remember what the biblical principle is. It's kind of like how, the big golden M stands for McDonald's, or the apple with the bite out of it stands for Apple Computers. Different shapes in this system help us remember different biblical teachings. So I want to introduce you to one of those. And it is a concept built on a semicircle. And the concept is about how to order our lives. In other words, how do we live in the midst of a growing to-do list? Let's explore this first, and then we'll do a little mindfulness meditation on it. So, imagine a semicircle in your mind. And at the top flat part of the semicircle, in the middle, imagine that there is a pendulum there that swings to each side of the semicircle below. It goes back and forth. And imagine on one side are the words abide and rest, and on the other end, work or production. So the pendulum should be easily swinging between the two. In other words, that there's times when it's on the abiding side or the resting side, and then it swings over to the work or the production side. Now, this is how life is supposed to be, but for most people, it isn't how it works. Instead, our pendulum is most stuck on work and production, and abiding and resting seem pointless to us. But we were actually created to abide. In John's Gospel, chapter 15, we hear Jesus' call to us to abide in him, to rest in him. This is where we worship, where we get our identity, where we hear from God in his direction. But with our pendulum stuck on production and work, we find it goes against our very nature and the way God has actually created us. So how do we know that? Well, we look at the rhythm of creation itself. 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. And in Genesis, we see how humanity is created on day 6. And so day 7, humanity's first full day after creation, is one of rest. God didn't make us and say, get to work. No, our first day was rest. And that models for us that we actually are called to work out of rest. Not that we rest after we fall down exhausted from all of our work. Rest is what grounds us, and out of being renewed and resting, then we work. We see this in Jesus' ministry. Remember his call at the beginning, we see how he's baptized, and then he goes on a retreat. Now, his time in the desert was not a vacation, but it was a time of abiding, a time of listening to God. And it was the opposite of what would follow when he gathered his disciples and did the work of ministry. So he did the work of ministry out of first being rested. There is a great Instagram account I want to turn you on to called The Nap Ministry. Check it out and you can learn more about them and rest. Let's do a bit of mindfulness around John 15. So take a moment and take in a deep breath. Relax and be present. Remember who you are. You are God's beloved. And remember in whose image you were created. In the image and likeness of God. As I read these words, just listen and breathe them in as we reflect together. I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Jesus said, I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. What are these words saying to you today? Think of the semicircle and its back and forth pendulum. And think of working from being rested. And think of your connection to God in Christ this day. May you remember these words this week, and may they give you life. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. I invite you to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. As with anything that's brand new, I'd appreciate all the encouragement I can get. Follow me on Instagram at Nicole Reilley Coaching. I'm also on Facebook as well, and you can find out about working with me as a coach, as well as social media management at NicoleReilley.com. And I invite you to check out my book, Expanding the Expedition Through Digital Ministry, at Amazon. Today, I invite you to make the most important choice, to embrace a life of wellness. See you next week.